funny. I found fix this camera up. It's funny, in my travels I found one spot I've seen. I'll take you guys there sometime. Huge mature timber, never been logged before. And I found like 12 cedar poles, way bigger than these ones, all leaned up around a big fir tree in the middle of nowhere where it's impossible to get equipment. It is what it is. When you know these beings are running around, nothing's really surprising. It's like, oh, well, whatever that means. It is what it is, but I'm slowly making my way to bail over the edge and go straight down this mountain as I'm looking for something unrelated, but it's funny when I see something like this and the direction of gravity is actually, well, let's take off a look. The direction of gravity is I guess straight away from me, I would think. And the chance of all these trees falling and landing in the exact same one spot is kind of doesn't really fit with gravity, does it? And you can see where they're placed. Didn't even grow there. But anyways, whatever, it is what it is. A bunch of big trees stacked up. Normally I see these sort of things quite often. I'm not really overly concerned about it myself. But I thought since I was making a video right here, I would videotape that for those who are interested. So there you go. How'd that happen? All right, still alive, still not home, and we switched places. We had to leave the other place we were staying at, and went to a new place, and it was kind of really questionable at first. Outside, you know those funny videos people put online, and they'll have the music, and then all of a sudden it turns into a wreck, and the music will be like the broken flute. Right, I'm gonna make a video like that out of what the pictures of the place were like online to sell it, and what the pictures that Sarah took of the place once we got here. But anyways, the room's actually pretty decent, so we'll see. But we're both getting close to time to going home, so. Anyway, quick note. So yesterday I started to read that one email, or I finished reading that email with the drip line, and I was all confused. You know, it's funny. I've never used drip line in my vocabulary ever that I can remember when I'm referring to a tree. Isn't that funny? Especially growing up in British Columbia. We're at the logging central of North America, basically. Never used drip line of a tree in my life, but a whole bunch of you clued me in. So I'm going to read the tail end of that email one more time, and then it'll make more sense to me. I got too much in my brain, I don't know. The drip line of the tree, crazy, is where the outside branches reach, where the rain, snow drips off, I guess. Now, with the snow and the ice on the ground, it was easy to follow the trail the deer left. We followed the deer around 30 yards through the brush until we came to one of the largest cedar trees in the park. From one side of the drip line to the other had to be 20 feet. Now we understand. And had to be 5 feet off the ground. All right, so the bottom of the limbs were 5 feet off the ground. The drag line and the blood line stopped at the drip line of the tree. I told one ranger to go left and the other to go right, and I would look under the tree to see what I could find. So it wasn't a tree on its side. He was looking under the drip line. With all three of us looking, we found nothing, and I mean not a single track print, drag line, blood, nothing, leaving from under that tree or any mark coming to that tree. That deer was just gone. We never found it or any reason for it to have just disappeared like it did. Have you ever experienced anything like this in your life? I still get goosebumps just writing this down. No, not me, but people that have wrote in. One guy wrote in his deer took off, fell over, got dark, tracked it in the snow, same thing, blood, found it hanging way up in a branch and saw the dude, the Sasquatch, with a spotlight. Yeah, there you go. Gotcha, fully understand. I hope you didn't have to start writing me an email to explain to my dumbass what a drip line is. Man, you can hear that big surf. There's big winds and big storm yesterday, and big winds and big waves out there. You can probably hear them. Now, who else do we got? Don't know what this is about. I'm diving in. All right, what do we got? Who do we got? This is marked as red. Big city sighting. Hi Steve, my name is Scott and I live in a suburban city in northern Kentucky, about 10 minutes from downtown Cincinnati. I'm surrounded by subdivisions. There are small patches of wooded areas all throughout the city. The Ohio River is about 5 miles of woods over the hill from me. You can see the river if you go down to the bottom of the next street over. Excuse me. It was late September, early October 2021 when I started noticing strange things. I woke up around 4 a.m. during the weekdays for work. The first thing I do is smoke a cigarette out on my front porch and read the newspaper on my on my phone. About a week before, I started noticing helicopters flying around the area I live. They were loud and flew very low. I could feel the vibration in my chest. They were so low. I've had the same morning routine for 10 years, and I've never heard a helicopter at that time of the morning. This particular morning, I heard an owl hoot. I've never heard or noticed an owl in the 40 years I've lived there at my house. The hoot seemed a little off. I remember thinking, that was weird. The next morning I'm out there and I hear the owl hoot again, but this time 2 other owls chime in. They all three sounded off. This time I remember laughing at it because it sounded so funny. I always thought owls lived alone and were very territorial. I was kind of thinking that was a little strange too. The deer population in my city is huge. They're almost like dogs and they are everywhere. They come up to our house at night and graze in the grass and are always out there at that time of the year. I started noticing the deer not being around. I didn't think too much of it. The third night I'm on my porch and I hear a branch snap and the owls again. And the snap was very loud. And out of nowhere, I hear dogs throughout the neighborhood going totally berserk. I never heard them act like that before. I kind of felt sorry for the owners because the barking was so loud and these dogs seemed uncontrollable. And once again, Another strange morning. A couple days go by with nothing out of the ordinary except for the helicopters flying low. But I wasn't thinking too much about the previous days. And on the fifth morning of this sequence of events, the dogs went nuts again. The owls were back, and I heard what sounded like clicking noises behind my neighbor's house. I'd never heard that sound before in my life. At work that day, I mentioned the things that had taken place to my coworker. Trying to be funny, he said, "It must be a Bigfoot." And we laughed and got on with our day. And the next morning is when I realized there's something going on that's not normal. And out of nowhere, I hear this perfect whistle across the street behind the woods of my neighbor's house. My first thought was, who would be whistling at 4 a.m. in the woods? This whistle was pristine and very loud. It was crisp and sounded perfect. I'm not gonna lie, it scared the hell out of me. I've always been told not to respond or whistle back when you're in the woods. I started looking into all these strange occurrences, and everything I read and watched pointed to something cryptic. I thought, there's no way. So of course my senses are heightened, and I start paying attention to every noise that I hear throughout the next couple of weeks. But the thing is, it all stopped. Nothing. No more owls, no more tree barks, no dog barking, no helicopters, and the deer are back. Absolutely nothing. And after a week or two, I stopped thinking about what had happened. My life was back to normal, LOL. Now, fast forward to March of this year, 2022, the helicopters are back, the deer disappeared again, the owls were back, the neighbor's dogs were going nuts, and I heard the clicking noises again. And this went on for about a week. I started watching YouTube channels, which is how I found you, about Dogman and Bigfoot. And the whole time I'm thinking, there's no way it's one of these creatures, there's just no way. On the morning of March 23rd, I'm outside in the morning when I hear the clicking and pop noises, but it sounded really close this time. I looked up and across the street, and I see a 8 to 9 foot tall bipedal creature in my neighbor's yard staring at me. I froze, I couldn't move a muscle. I could only see the silhouette with the lighting that was there, and it was huge. And after about 5 seconds, I snapped out of it, and I stood up just to make sure I wasn't seeing things, and I definitely wasn't. The creature looked like it turned its head and walked down the side of the house through a mulch bed and disappeared. The whole thing lasted about 10 seconds, and I was floored. I could not believe it. I was second guessing myself, but I know what I saw. Getting ready for work that morning was a blur. I parked my Jeep directly across from where I walked down the driveway. The sun was just coming up, and I had to pump myself up just to get to my car. When I finally got out the door, I ran to my vehicle. I looked down the area where it walked, and in the mulch bed there were freaking footprints. This blew my mind, just unbelievable. There was no way I was getting out to take a picture or to inspect it closer. And when I got to work, I didn't say a word about it since I figured my coworker wouldn't believe me anyway. I've told a couple family members and they just laughed it off, and I guess that comes with the territory. The footprints stayed visible in the mulch bed for about a week, but washed out when it rained. I'm kicking myself for not getting a closer look at them, but I was afraid if my neighbors saw me down there, they'd think I was nuts. They stay to themselves, and I didn't know how they'd react if they saw me rooting around in their yard. I wish I would have done it, though. I never given too much thought about Sasquatch or Dogman. The cryptic world just never crossed my mind. But seeing is believing, and I know what I saw. And for all I know, this has been happening every year since I've lived here, and probably for thousands of years before. But the thing is, they are so stealthy that people just never pay attention to the small details going on around them. And the scary part is, they are so close to the big cities. Not just the Pacific Northwest or forests with a ton of acreage. They are literally right in our backyards. It doesn't matter where you live. These creatures may migrate and pass through my area. The river is close, and there are train tracks down there also. It's a nice pipeline to get from one point to another. I still hear strange things on occasion, but not the amount of activity I was getting at the end of the fall and the beginning of spring. I'm definitely aware now, and my eyes and ears are always open. Thanks, Steve, for doing what you do and for bringing awareness to the subject. People need to be aware that these beings are out there and start paying attention to their surroundings. They are everywhere. Take care and God bless. Scotty J. Gotcha. I never read this one before. Appreciate that email, man. I wonder if you're still hanging out here, and if you are, give me an update. All right, if you're still hanging out, give me an update. And that reminds me, just up in Campbell River, I think Campbell River is an hour and a bit farther up Vancouver Island from us. Do you remember we had a guy email us here who was talking to some homeless people that live, I think it's right behind Save-On Foods, is what he said, which is right down where the river is, right in town. And he sent those pictures in the wintertime of those footprints that were kind of blown across from the snow, but there they were, right there in Campbell River, coming up from the river behind the Save-On Foods or whatever, a superstore maybe. But there they were. There's the photos to prove it. Sent in. Anywhere is right. Anywhere is right. Okay. Who's next? Mark, this is red. This is out of the recent inbox. Special Forces, SADF-Angolan encounter. Angolan, we had somebody else? Hey, hold on. Did I read this? Good day, Steve. My name is Paul, and you can mention my name. All right, no, I haven't read this. Obviously, it's brand new, but it sounds familiar. I've been listening to your channel for some time now, and I just came across an incident that happened in Angola. We were carrying out operations there back in 1986 as part of a recon unit for the SADF at the time. And as I listened, I couldn't believe you were being told about my experience from a friend that I haven't seen or heard from for at least 2 decades now. We were part of a reconnaissance unit tracking the insurgents who went into that swamp, where several of them were taken out that day. No shit. How random crazy is that? That crazy, I remember that email, and that was George, or Jorge George, and he's emailed us a few times. Let's carry on. And that was one hell of a crazy ass story. Let me get back to the beginning of the sentence. We were part of a reconnaissance unit tracking the insurgents who went into that swamp where several of them were taken out that day. Only 3 of them made it out that day, breaking cover and running straight towards us, shouting that they had been attacked in the swamp. MID never did get our full report. We would have been compromised otherwise. Crazy. Hearing the incident just brought back a flood of memories of that day. Never thinking anything of it until I heard you reading it here on your channel. Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Thinking back on this, wow. I never really put it down to anything normal, but listening to it again, I'm guessing Sasquatch would make sense. The one by the river would definitely be a possible Sasquatch, although we only ever saw the mirrored type cloaking effect. We could tell from the outline it was human-like, but its size was really gigantic. I would have said about 1.5 meters to 1.8 meters from shoulder to shoulder, and about 3.5 to 4 meters in height, built solid and moving way too fast for such a massive volume. I don't know if he also shared the incident of the predator being we encountered on the riverbed previously. He originally cited the being and notified the rest of the team, and I joined him on a flanking maneuver to expose this massive figure. Very big in both height and width, and to our surprise, it was no longer there. I could have sworn I noticed the cloaking effect it had while moving behind some boulders facing the river. We moved in like lightning, but on arriving at that spot, there was nothing there. And as we withdrew back to our pickup point, George, is it Jorge or George? Jorge. I'm going to call him George. Great guy. Kept going on about his chocolate, bracket, bar 1/Mars bar, end bracket, having disappeared out of his webbing. Arriving at the chopper, I reached for my chocolate and realized mine was missing too. George always maintained that we were robbed of our chocolates by the invisible being as a token of respect and clear indication that it could have killed us with very little effort. The swamp episode was intense. The absolute silence, the orbs, the intense smell, the insurgents, and their uncontrollable shouting and wide-eyed expressions. I'll never forget those 3 days. All of us in that swamp had that intense feeling that something bad was going to happen. Any professional soldier with experience knows the feeling of death. This feeling was so intense, we have never forgotten it. From the Zulu tribesmen and our Bushman trackers, we all had a feeling that we were under extreme danger, and for hours we were pretty sure we were going to be attacked by those orbs that moved sporadically in the distance, coming closer and then further away. Nothing made sense that day. We were armed to the teeth, and yet we were all sensing this massive fear factor. We were all ready to die that day, and yet within a few hours, everything went back to normal and we were able to move out. I hope this serves as another learning experience for your channel. What still gets to me this day was the intensity of impending death and the intense rotting smell that accompanied this. We were all manning our 50 cals, and we were all sitting, and we were still sitting there with tight anal sphincters. Never admitting it to one another, but we were sure that something was out there to take us out. Thank you for this channel. I hope this helps further verifying that Africa has its fair share of mysteries too. While in the bush, the mysteries and ridiculous become reality, and a massive weight to those wanting to survive that deadly environment. Regards, Paulo. Holy shit, Paulo. That is freaking crazy. Yeah, George emailed us a couple years ago, maybe even a few years ago, and told us about you guys tracking those guys, the insurgents. And he said they went to the swamps and something was going down and they all came running to you guys for help, the remaining handful of them. I totally, absolutely remember that. And George has written into us a few other times as well. I wonder if, I don't know, are you guys in contact with each other? If not, do you want to be? I'll put you in contact with each other, no problem. Just email me back and let me know. And then I will send your request to George, and then you guys can take it from there. And I've done that in the past with military guys a few times. The A-10 Warthog pilot, who they watched that one in Afghanistan digging in the field at nighttime, and as soon as their IR flash hit it was covering its eyes, like he said, it reacted like they were doing damage to its eyes. And then it got up and took off, and they could not believe that this thing saw their IR light. And they tracked it all the way up the mountain until it disappeared in the bush, into the rocks. And they had me put them in touch with some other forces guys that rode in as well. And they've been carry on swapping back and forth, whatever they're swapping back and forth. So anyways, let me know if you want me to put you in touch with George. I'll look up his email, and then I will send you your request to him. And then you guys have at it. And if you guys want to update me with anything else, go ahead. But that's pretty exciting. I mean, think about it, you guys, talking to the rest of the viewers. Think about this one. We had a guy in the forces in Africa in the 80s having an absolute mind-boggling experience, and one of his military partners is watching this channel as well. What the F, right? How cool is that? There's a reach, I'll tell you what, this channel reaches every corner of the planet, doesn't it? Looking forward to hearing from you if you guys want to bullshit with each other again. Crazy. What's this? Don't know what this is at all. This is really weird. I'll have to read that another time. It's got it's an email forwarded to me about Okay, it's political, full-on political email, so I'll read it over. I'll read it over later. And I know some of you people are going to be, well, you say things about politics whenever you feel like it. And I'm like, yeah, well, usually it's just a ramble. It's not a huge email. Now, learning women's scream and driven from the outdoors. All right, that's a different type title. We're going in. Steve, in your video of January 27, 2024, 2 deep-sea dive partners are terrorized by a Sasquatch North Vancouver Island. You say it's a red flag that some Sabe know how women scream for help. How do they learn that? A number of people who report communicating with them say the Sabe are disgusted with the different ways that they see humans hurting other humans. Humans finding other humans in the woods or bringing humans out of the woods to hurt them or murder them. Human crime history certainly supports plenty of opportunities for a Sabe to observe these human behaviors, hence learn human calls for help. And like humans, there are reports of Sabe, including from Sabe, of so-called bad ones. And the bad ones could certainly create circumstances where they would learn that scream. One older story you read was from someone camping alone who ended up with 2 female Sabe hanging around the outside of his tent at all night, telling him they're there to protect him from one that, I think the phrase was along the lines of, wanted to hurt him, or intended to hurt him. Yeah, I remember that. And a fairly recent story you read where someone discovered a local sheriff sighting in a diner looking stunned. And a fairly recent story you read where someone discovered a local sheriff sitting in a diner looking stunned. The sheriff told of a couple out in the woods naked, doing what people do when 2, maybe 3 Sabe males came along, ignored the naked woman, but each had their way with the man and they left, and the man later died. My immediate reaction as you read that was that the conduct between the 2 people was not consensual, and the Sabe reacted to that with a form of justice matching the crime. From some comments under the video, others had the same or similar conclusion. Just one of many potential examples where a Sabe could have heard a woman screaming for help. Crazy, right? So the question becomes, why are some trying to lure people into the woods, deeper into the woods, or away from their camp, or even from their rural home? From some reports, these are not Sabe, and some of which sometimes mimic Sabe. And from other reports, these must be the bad ones. But in some cases, luring might possibly be related to something else you commented on. Your comment on a woman's scream for help being a red flag came shortly after your concern about how people get rid of everything and give up going into the woods. For some of those, it's going to be the trauma from an encounter, like the people who cannot talk about a shared experience. For many, this appears to be an unfortunate side effect of being chased out of an area, as though the method or intensity had a greater effect than intended. A few cases report the same or another Sabe later lowering the lasting effect. In other cases, it's like the man viewing a Sabe through a scope, but when his hunting partner arrived, the Sabe would duck back out of sight whenever the partner tried to view the Sabe through a scope. Not only did the Sabe detect that the man had seen and was viewing him, he was aware of the difference in character between the 2 men. One man would be tolerated viewing with a rifle scope, as in, with the rifle pointed at the Sabe, but the other would not be. So I suspect that some of those traumatized had some aspect of their character judged, and correct or not, a Sabe or Sabes decided to drive them out of there with a strong dose of keep the F away forever. Nearly all of those writing into you that include their or someone they know avoiding the outdoors seem to clearly fall into the overwhelmed category. Some of those report returning to the outdoors, some sooner than others. Some just can't bear to, but some few of those writing in, like that rejected hunting partner, there are a few hints of someone's attitudes that I could see Sabe interpreting as and judging as, we do not want this human here near us or anywhere near other Sabe ever. So they take steps to make that happen. Rather than just a few examples given above, I believe the majority of reports support and explain the thoughts above. I can't recall any outliers that don't fit. I hope people will put any in the comments or write in so the above thoughts can be supported, refined, expanded, or refuted as we all develop explanations and understanding for the encounters and behaviors reported. Michael, there you go. Glad to see the wheels turning, Michael. Right on. Right on, and you never know, and it sounds plausible to me. But one thing for sure is the red flag, trying to lure kids out of their bedroom, trying to ask them to come out into the forest and follow them into the forest while looking in their bedroom window. That's not good, right? Making like a woman's voice and screaming for help, that's not too cool. Others have heard their father's voice mimicked perfectly when their dad is at home. Another guy had his mother's voice mimicked perfectly, calling his name out loud from the forest. Tried to go in the forest and the voice got further away. But who knows who's doing that until you see them do it physically too, right? There's all sorts of weird shit going on. Keep the wheels turning. Comment in the comment section below if you can relate to that email. Who's next? All right, here's another one. Mark, this is red. Mind, sound, and a possible experience. I just resent it in case it got lost. I originally sent it from a different email. Okie dokie. Hello, Steve. I want to take a quick second to commend you on your work to help the people. Many people have had face-to-face or visual encounters that have left them in a state of disarray, and I'm sure many more have had just an odd encounter with something they just can't logically explain. My experience falls into the latter category. Nonetheless, thank you for bringing everyone together in a safe place where they might find answers or just some understanding of what they experienced. I drive tractor trailers over the road, and during the winter, sometime between December 2020 and February 2021, I was traveling on Interstate 87 in northeast New York State. It was about 2 a.m. in the morning, about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was in an area that seemed no one was around for 20 miles or so. The traffic that night was very light. Saw a car or a truck every few minutes. I couldn't see any lights from houses or anything, and I'm not from the area, but it seemed to be very rural, or even pretty remote in that area. It was not snowing this night, but it had recently. Everything was covered in probably 2 to 3 feet of snow, and it was close to a full moon. It was a clear night, very bright from the moonlight reflecting off the snow. I was traveling along an area where there was a large median between the north and south lanes, and as I came around a bend, I saw an object flying through the air towards the truck. It was coming from the trees or wooded area that made up the median. I did not see exactly where it originated from, but it was 30 to 40 feet in the air and was headed my way from what appeared to be approximately 75 to 100 yards away. And as it got closer, I could tell it was going to impact my windshield directly in front of the driver's seat, and I noticed myself trying to get skinny up against the door as if I could lean out of the way to avoid it. Everything seemed to be in slow motion, and the last second or so until the object impacted the windshield, just before it hit the truck, I could tell it was a snowball about the size of a honeydew melon, and when it hit, it exploded across the windshield, momentarily obstructing my view. I turned on my wipers and tried to see what in the world could have caused that, and also looked out my driver window as I went past the area I believe it came from, and I didn't see anything. There were no overhead objects such as trees, light poles, power poles, overpasses, or power lines that it could have fallen from. And like I said, this snowball came towards me in a trajectory as if someone thrown from an outfielder to home plate. I played sports at a high level with many talented athletes, even some that went on to play professionally. I witnessed some amazing athletic feats in person, and I will tell you, I don't know of any human who could possibly possess the strength or talent to launch a snowball of that size in that manner. Not even Bo Jackson. I tried to come up with a logical explanation, and the only thing I can think may explain what happened is this. 3 teenagers or young adults with one of those 3-man beach slingshots were in the median of the interstate, miles away from anything, in cold 20-degree weather at 2 a.m. trying to hit cars with huge snowballs. I just don't think that's a realistic answer given the situation. I've told many people about this, and they all don't really have any other explanation. Sorry, you guys. I've told many people about this, and they all don't really have any other explanation to offer up, so I'm just left with the question of what happened. I believe it was an encounter with these beings, but I don't dwell on it, and it has not given me any fear of the outdoors, just a desire to know more. I have heard many stories of things being thrown at people, usually in a non-threatening manner, but I've not really heard it being described as playful or jokingly. Do you think this is a possibility? Could this be these beings mimicking our activities, such as throwing a baseball back and forth to each other, or child throwing snowballs at one another, copying something that they may have seen while watching from the wood line? I think it is possible, and I think they may misunderstand it, thinking it may be another way we communicate. I'd like to hear what you think. And on a side note, you mention all the time whether or not you want to experience mind speak. I believe you already have. Let's call it mind sound. You refer to the time you and your partner were in the woods, separated by a short distance, and you heard a loud wood knock. Actually, my partner heard the knock. I didn't hear shit. After getting back over to your partner and asking if they heard it, they told you no. It was actually the other way around. No big deal. Could it be possibly that the being you were near wanted you to know they were nearby but didn't want to show themselves, or wanted you out of the area? Maybe the wood knock you heard was imprinted in your mind and not audible. Mind sound? This would explain why your partner did not hear it. What do you think? Thank you for your time, and hopefully this helps someone somehow. Jerry Wilson. I sent you a story on January 7th, 2023 that I haven't heard shared yet, but the reason I'm sending you this note is my experience was extremely similar to Cody Coon's you read yesterday. The title of the story is in the subject line to make it easier to search. Keep the truth coming. Okay, man, let me mark that as look into, so I will look into that and find it. Look into other email. All right, quick reply. So yeah, that one other incident, we were in the woods elk hunting, and that was about, 400 yards away from where the trail camera was spun around the tree to face the next tree to it, 8 feet in the air, and also exactly where all those small trees were busted off, shoulder height, some pulled out of the ground by the roots, like a bouquet of them placed on the ground. The grass is all stomped flat, same zone. And I went walking back along that deactivated road by myself to go get the quad, got back, and my buddy said, was that you banging on those trees? I'm like, what are you talking about? So how do they selectively allow people to see them, or children? Don't know, but they do, 100%. The snowball thing. So you guys are familiar with my old girlfriend's story from years ago on the highway on their way to Edmonton, middle of the night, past Blue River, or coming up to Blue River, Blue River, Valemont, past Blue River, coming into Valemont on the uphill. It's a full-on whiteout snow blizzard, right? That story. And her passenger was terrified, looking out the window at her, and she looked beside her, and this thing was stooped over, bending down, loping beside the car, looking in the window, with a look on his face. She said, like he was rocking it out, like he was entertaining himself, was the expression on his face. Big white square teeth like ours, and then veered off into the whiteness. She saw she's in there, so the highway would be back. Anyway, same chunk of highway. Greyhound at the time when they were still operating. Greyhound bus driver was reported in the middle of nowhere, past Blue River, huge snowballs flying out of the timber, hitting the windshield of the bus. So, it sounds like it's entertainment to me, right? I mean, obviously you're gonna have some characters out there. If I was one of those hairy people, I'd be doing the same shit. I'd be doing worse. I'd be terrorizing people all the time, laughing my ass off. It's just who I am, but the snowball thing sounds like it's entertainment. For sure. Odd though, right? Who knows? Maybe it's the same dude. You never know, right? But anyway, there we go. I'm going to carry on with getting settled in here. And then there isn't any Wi-Fi up here. It's supposed to be, but there isn't. So I don't know what I'm going to do to get this loaded up. We'll see if I can. If I can, I can. If not, well, I will. Eventually. And I'll probably be back tomorrow. Man, those waves are huge out there. The wind's been screaming for a couple days. And rain like you would not freaking believe. Thought it could rain hard at home. It can rain here. Holy shit. Anyway, share my story, howtohunt.com. I'll be back shortly. So, I drove around, looked at a lot of bush yesterday with a friend of mine who lives on the coast here, owns a fishing lodge. And he's been a lifelong logger, hunting guide, past hunting guide, and current charter business owner. And what he told me was, I was grilling him all sorts of questions about logging and falling, and he said that when you see a great big huge cedar tree like this where it's been logged off, he said pretty well there's going to be a bear down there. And that the timber cruisers who lay out the cut blocks, apparently they mark out where the bear dens are before the fallers go in there and cut the trees so they leave them. So now that he told me that, and you can see this tree has a big hollow center in it. Look at that. We've heard about those a few times, haven't we? So, let's go take a look inside that hollowed out cedar tree. No, I haven't looked in there yet. You guys are coming with me. First time. It's a big tree. The center of it has been on fire before. Look at that. See that the burn mark in the middle. Well, hopefully nothing comes running out in my face. Wow, look at that. If I can lighten this up. There we go. Yeah, you could easily sleep in here. It's a big, hollowed out cedar tree. Wow. Even has a skylight. Interesting. There we go. Man, that tree's got to be pretty old. Oh, there's bear tracks right here below my feet, actually. All right, on to the adventure.